Hi, readers. Welcome to Goddess Garden Book Chat. As I've alluded to in the preview video, this conversation is going to be split between part one and part two. So, just wanted to give you a little heads up before we get into the conversation. You are looking at two videos that are going to start in conversation. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you'll come back for more. And I hope you'll excuse my newfound editing skills. I promise I'll do better in the future. But this conversation was worth posting, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. See you next time. Hi, readers. Welcome to Goddess Garden Book Chat. This is where adults who love a good novel, regardless of the genre, the weirdness, the planet it takes us to, or the openness we find on the pages, gather and talk about wonderful books that we can enjoy. As always, as a club, we want you to be comfortable, be welcomed, and be aware. Topics discussed in this book club include everything from basement dungeons to other worlds. I will read them all and share thoughts in this safe space. So whether it's morning or night, whether you're in your car, whether you're in your office listening to it on your headphones, I'm so happy that you're a part of the conversation. I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you joined me and that you share this time with me. Always, the conversations continue on Discord. If you ever want to talk into a deep dive about the things that happen on this channel, please join me, and my other social pages are listed below. So that's where you can find me. The design choice today, as you can see, is a comparative between the Percy Jackson and the Olympians book versus Percy Jackson and the Olympians movie. And then there is Percy Jackson, The Sea of Monsters versus Percy Jackson's movie book. You get the deal. So I decided to invite the person that I talk to the most about these topics. So please welcome Seth. We're going to definitely jump in and have a great conversation. And I'm going to start this off with the lightning thief. And I'm going to start it off because I personally thought the movies were great. Let me give you a little backstory on why I thought the movies were great.
Go ahead.
When you told me you were reading the book, I wanted to be a part of it, but I didn't want to read it because I felt like when I tried to read Rick Riordan's book, it was a little geared toward youth.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't get into it. But when the movie came out, and this is the movie that was released back in the early 2000s, was it?
I wouldn't say early 2000s. It was around the time all the other YA movies were being released, like
Okay.
Hunger Games and
Okay.
The Maze Runner, all those.
All those. Okay. So when you showed an interest, I thought, well, I'll just watch the movie. And I loved the movie. And I shared my joy of loving the movie with you, which made no sense to you.
Yeah, I expressed distaste.
So, with that being said, I'm going to go through the movie I saw. You're going to tell me why the book, because you've read the book, I think at least more than once, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell me where these two don't match up and where you see problem areas where I fell in love. So I, of course, script all my shows and I have everything here so I won't forget anything. So let's go through it.
Oh, one thing. While discussing the movies, I think it'd be better to keep both movies separate because there are going to be certain things that I bring up that are going to be addressed by the second movie. But I think it'll be easier to talk about if we just talk about them each as solo experiences. So,
okay, so we're starting with the lightning thief.
Yes.
And we're starting with the movie.
All right.
Because these are the notes that guided my opinion as to why I think it's a great film.
Okay.
Now, it starts with Poseidon, who just rolls up out of the ocean and goes by his girlfriend's house on his way to talk to Zeus. And they meet on top of this high rise, and Zeus accuses Poseidon of his son Percy stealing the lightning. And if he doesn't bring this lightning back, if you don't get your son to get this lightning back to me,
the master bolt,
it's going to be a problem. And Poseidon is like, no, that didn't happen. And Poseidon issues a timeline threat of war. Was it Poseidon or Zeus?
Zeus.
Zeus is a timeline of war. Poseidon swears it can't be Percy, but okay. Percy's living his life. He knows nothing about being a demigod. And we'll talk more about demigods later, but he doesn't know anything about this. He just has this innate sense of how his relationship to water is unparalleled to anybody else's. He has a best friend whose name is Grover, but in fact, Grover is his protector, and Grover is a satyr. Then there's Mrs. Dodd, and she's sort of the substitute English teacher that takes the class on a tour of a museum exhibit that is both an exhibit of the god Poseidon and words that there's another teacher, we'll get to him, that are trying to convey. But Mrs. Dodd is standing in the background giving Percy the side eye because she's there because she thinks, like everybody else, Percy has the boat. So in the middle of the museum, mayhem breaks out. Percy has to defend himself, and he's like freaking out. Okay, fast. Now let's switch reels to Percy's mother. Percy's mother lives with a complete and utter bad dude named Gabe.
Uh-huh.
But Gabe serves a purpose that we'll get to later. His mom is aware of who he is, but she's been keeping this secret, and there's a whole level of issues I have with secrets that parents keep from children, like they're stupid in these books, but we're not going to go there. Anyway, so mom is keeping this secret. So when the issue breaks out at the museum, so far we're on the same track, right? You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
Okay. So when it breaks out and Grover takes Percy and they run, they go to Percy's house and tell his mother, we got to go. They jump in the car, Percy's screaming because he's realizing that there are monsters chasing them. And he's the only one that's sort of freaking out, but he's trying to get his mother to safety. Let me make sure I'm looking at my notes. The first pursuer, which was Mrs. Dodd, was a Fury, correct?
Yes, she's one of the Furies.
She's one of the Furies. And then there is
the Minotaur, right?
Right.
Or unless I don't remember the movie that well. Does the Minotaur pursue them or not?
Yeah, it is a Minotaur that's pursuing them, but that's after they go get mom. And they go on the road, and then there's a Minotaur because that's what stops mom from going through the barrier to Camp Blood.
You keep going.
Okay. So anyway,
Half-Blood, by the way.
Camp Half-Blood, thank you. Camp Half-Blood. So then there is Mr. Bruner, who he thinks is a professor at his school or a teacher at his school, but turns out is running Camp Half-Blood. He sees him in his true form as a centaur, and
his real name
is, did I catch, Chiron. And so he tells Percy, which I thought was fascinating, Poseidon built Camp Half-Blood for Percy. But Percy doesn't know anything about it. He's just showing up. Everybody else is already active and they're fighting and they're engaging in battle or preparation of battle training. And he's just showing up out of the blue and you're Percy Jackson. Then he starts to go around and let me see. He knows that Zeus and Hades are warring over this boat, and Poseidon are warring. And let's see, the world is in jeopardy if this is not dealt with. And so that's why they're coming after you. This is what Chiron tells Percy. And Camp Half-Blood gets invaded, so they have to go on a quest. He goes on this quest with Annabeth and Grover. And at this point, he is accepting, just like in a matter of minutes, that all these things in his life have changed, that his dad is a demigod and he's now questing. Mm-hmm. All of this happens in almost what I want to say within 24 hours of him arriving at camp. Yeah. He does some light training. He meets Luke. He thinks Luke is a great guy. Luke's super helpful. You get the flying Converse because you may need these on your little quest adventure. And the flying Converse come in handy later. So don't laugh at me. Then there's
I'm not laughing at you. I'm
okay.
laughing at the movie.
Well, you know what I mean. The water power fight. Wait, the water power when he fights Annabeth. So he has this innate instinct when he's training and he gets hurt at Camp Half Blood, where he wants to be healed after he's training with Annabeth. So he puts his hand in the river and the water just washes up and starts to heal him. And so he now understands his relationship to water, which I thought was cool. And so as they start the quest out, after they get all this information and he's got the flying converses and he's ready to rock and roll, the first place they go, because they have to get these pearls. These pearls are necessary, but they're not clear yet. But they're on this journey for pearls. And the first pearl lies with Medusa. This is where I'm going to stop because I'm going to let you interject up to do when we meet Medusa. How much these stories are alike and how much they're different?
I mean, already so completely different from the book. I don't even know where to start. Okay. I mean, it's actually like I really don't know where to start. Okay, I'm gonna start like at the basics.
Okay.
For starters, the setup with Percy and his character are very drastically different from the book. I think in the movie, Percy is what, like 16?
Correct.
Or something like that. Yes, he's 16.
But we'll get into book 2 and how they screw that up later. But yeah,
they've already screwed it up here. But
okay.
In the book, he's 12, and in the movie, he's attending public school, right?
Right.
In the book, he's attending a private school called Yancey Academy, alongside Grover, who's known for about like a year at that point, and the same Chiron's been teaching there for about a year. So in the book, we immediately start just with Percy. We don't start with Zeus and Poseidon meeting, because that's wrong and bad for a lot of reasons that I'll get into later. But we start with Percy, and we get like a sort of like a little background on Percy and his life, and he tells us that all his life has been kind of where he's always been like sort of a problem child. From the fact that all these strange occurrences happened to him from time to time, like weird strangers would come up to him. There was one instance where when he was a baby, his mother found like a snake in his crib that he'd strangled. All this like weird stuff happened to him all the time.
Really? And they left this out of the movie?
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, because I don't remember seeing it.
And what's more, he'd always had like a problem with authority and with his teachers. He'd always find himself in some accident that would wind up with him being expelled and sent to another school.
And in the movie, it's ADHD. He can't process the letters that are on written paper.
It's the same in the book. He has ADHD and dyslexia in the book as well, which interestingly enough is sort of like the whole basis of the existence of the books. Partially is that Rick Riordan wanted his kids who had ADHD and dyslexia to have like sort of like a hero of their own in media.
Okay.
Which is a nice thing. But yeah, it's the same in the book that he has ADHD and dyslexia. And there are reasons for that. I think they go into it in the movie, but do you remember?
No, they don't. They just identify that he can't read written text the way that it is unless he's looking at ancient text, because that instantly starts to make sense to him. He can read ancient Greek script.
In the book, he can't literally instantly translate it, but he has a knack for understanding it better than he does like a regular written text.
Yeah, and the trip to the museum, letters just start shifting, and all of a sudden that says blah 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 blah.
And with his ADHD, it's explained all demigods have ADHD and dyslexia, and the ADHD is more like hardwired battle reflexes that all demigods have that help them in fights.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that.
Didn't go there. Movie didn't go there.
But yeah. And the reason he's attending the private school at that point in time is because, sort of a last resort. Even though realistically his mother can't afford it, she works at like a candy shop. and Gabe is like a manager at like a electronics store or something like that. He has to go to the private school because not many schools will take him at that point.
And his relationship with Gabe in the book is good or bad?
And extremely antagonistic.
Okay.
They fight all the time, but he tries to grit his teeth and bear it. But he's not home a lot, so he doesn't have to deal with Gabe most of the time unless he's home for the summer or when he gets expelled, which happens almost every year.
And this is the book's introduction of Percy, whereas in the movie, you're pretty much dealing with Percy almost near adulthood and realizing the same things, having the same trials and tribulations, like he's about to graduate high school age.
Yeah, that's completely off. This might be jumping ahead a little bit, but that's one of the issues I have with the movie. 16 is too old for Percy to be outside of Camp Half-Blood and not know who he is, because demigods are in a lot of danger in the mortal world. Monsters are attracted to them, especially the more powerful they are, and Percy's like a particularly powerful demigod.
Because he's the only direct descendant of either Zeus, Hades, or Poseidon.
Technically, no, but at this point,
that's
sort of
is no.
Sort of. But yeah, and I'm sure you were going to get into it later, but that's the whole reason that Sally married Gabe, was that mask Percy sent. But even still, 16 is far too old.
He should have been gone because his scent would have been stronger. Gabe wouldn't have been able to mask it. Gabe's issues of not bathing in his unsanitary ways are just untenable. But she stays because she knows she's protecting all the way up to an almost adult as this book launches. So we are now in Camp Half-Blood, and the pace of Camp Half-Blood was a little off-putting.
It's also extremely different. There's a lot that's different. We're not even through with the differences before Camp Half-Blood.
Okay.
So yeah, we get the introduction to Percy. A lot of it's the same. There's some like minor superfluous differences that I don't mind that they removed. Like there's this bully that Percy deals with that he protects Grover from. But the main difference is Miss Dodds, the Fury, does not believe in the book that Percy has the Master Bolt. That's a misconception that Percy has at the start of the book. But in fact, it's part of a major change that we'll get into more later when we talk about Hades and stuff. But in the same way, he in the book, he kills Miss Dodds. And then another thing I hate that they left out of the movie, what happens is that Chiron and Grover basically cover it up using something called the mist, which is this sort of like veil that keeps mortals from perceiving the godly world. And so Percy continued school for a while after that. Everyone else believing that Miss Dodds never existed and that instead had like a different math teacher this whole time. And the whole time Percy's questioning everything. Like, I know I didn't dream up Miss Dodds. I know that she existed. And I know that Grover and Chiron know what I'm talking about, but they're clearly lying to me. But I can't really call them on it.
Wow. And so when I see her, she's just a math teacher that allows the Professor Brunner to take the whole of this age group, I guess this grade level, on this museum trip.
Mm-hmm.
And she is playing the pursuer, the Fury that is trying to get something from him. You never get the impression that there's another relationship.
Yeah. She in the book, she's still trying to get something from him, but not the Master Bolt.
Okay. So fast forward to everything breaks out in the museum.
Yeah. Percy winds up killing Miss Dodds. But then, like I said, it's covered up by the mist. It goes on for a while. He gets expelled because he's just a problem child. He fails all his classes, stuff like that. And he gets into fights. And then he goes home for the summer to be with his mom. And his mom is a sort of consolation prize on the first day of summer. It's like, I'm going to take you up to the cabin we always go to that we spend time at, called Montauk, which is also where she'd happened to meet Poseidon for the first time.
Wow. I thought he went to her apartment in New York. They met at the club or something. He came up, he just did a hard left turn. He was standing in front of like, anyway.
Oh, another thing before that. This is not quite this, but I can see why they left it out. As Percy and Grover are on the way home from school on the Greyhound, they have a run-in with what are the Fates? Are you familiar with the Fates at all in Greek mythology?
Yes.
So Percy winds up seeing the Fates.
Yes.
And
they're also cab drivers.
No.
They're cab drivers in the movie.
I forgot that they did that. No.
Then they share one eyeball.
Like I said, forget the second movie. Put that out of your mind. No, they're in the book. They're like three old ladies at like a fruit stand, and they're knitting these giant pair of socks. And they do something like really significant, which is like they look directly at Percy, and they snip a thread, which usually means in the mythology that death. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the person they're looking at, but usually it's somebody close.
Okay.
In those incidents, both like his encounter with Miss Dodds and his encounter with the Fates are really putting Percy off because he knows something is wrong, but he doesn't quite know what it is. And Sally can tell something's wrong with him, and she's trying to soothe him, but she can also tell it's getting to be about that time where I have to answer Percy's questions, even though I don't want to. So she takes him to the cabin, and she tries to tell him a little bit about how he's special and about how she should have sent him to Camp Half-Blood a long time ago, but she didn't want to. And then Grover shows up on their doorstep, and he's like, "We have to go." And he makes Sally take Percy to Camp Half-Blood, but on the way they're attacked by the Minotaur.
Correct. That's about the only thing that happens that I know from the movie that translates from the book.
Sally is grabbed by the Minotaur, then disappears, and then Percy fights and kills the Minotaur. I don't think that happens in the movie, right?
Well, you don't know that he kills the Minotaur because the Minotaur captures Sally.
Yeah, in the book, he straight up breaks off the Minotaur's horn and kills it by stabbing it with his own horn.
If that happened, I don't remember it. What I do remember is that the Minotaur took Sally.
Yeah, that happened, and then after that, he killed him. And that's how when Percy wakes up in Camp Half-Blood, he already has sort of a reputation among the campers,
right,
as the boy who killed the Minotaur. Because it's not it's a monster of legend, as all monsters are. They're singular, not plural.
Okay.
And that's sort of what initially attracts Annabeth's interest to him as well, which I'll get into in a second. But you said something that jumped out to me, and I forgot they did this in the movie. You said that Chiron said that Poseidon built Camp Half-Blood for Percy?
Yes.
That is wholly ridiculous. What?
Well, that's what he told him.
That's ridiculous for 3 reasons.
Okay.
And I'll explain why. First of all, no, Camp Half-Blood has been around for a long time, and so has the practice of hero training.
Okay. Well, I thought that was a lot. Like, he built it when you were a baby, and it's been going on. Like,
Camp Half-Blood.
I heard what he said, but I was like, really? Poseidon built it? Did he build it?
No.
So Chiron clearly is functioning from a whole nother set of facts.
The second reason that's ridiculous is because Percy's not supposed to exist at all. Essentially, what happened in the books is it's explained that the big 3 gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, had a tendency to sire offspring that would be so powerful that they would change the course of events in history. And one of the last notable times being World War II, with Zeus and Poseidon's kids on one side and Hades' kids on the other side. And after that, they had an agreement, a pact to not sire any more children because their children are too powerful.
Okay.
All 3 would eventually wind up breaking this pact, but to save face. There's
a rule, but it's not a rule.
gods.
Okay.
But yeah, on the technical surface of it, none of their children are supposed to exist. So
Interesting that they would create a place where all of them would exist.
Well,
because Annabeth is
she's not one of the daughters of the big three.
No, but she's Athena's daughter, right?
When I say the big three, only Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades had that pact. None of the other gods.
None of the other gods. Okay.
And that's and we'll get into that in a second.
But it affected the other gods, right?
No.
Then how come Athena didn't have a relationship with her daughter?
That's another thing. And that's actually one of the most important parts of the book that I feel is really sorely missing in a lot of ways from the movie and in a lot of aspects, because it explains a lot of things.
I'm sorry, my cat is messing with my set design.
He's just chewing on the
tape. Could you not? Okay, go ahead. I knew letting him in was going to be an issue.
So just to start, and we'll get into this more when we talk about Luke, but essentially one of the major themes in the book is how neglectful the gods are of their children. They're really like, here you are, make your own way in the world. Maybe sometimes if we like one of our particular kids, we might give them a small amount of help.
None of them. But the only one that expressed real bitterness about it is Luke.
Yeah. They all, like, sometimes they tend to show favor in small ways, but for the most part, they're like very neglectful. And one of the ways that shows up, and I'm pretty sure they left this out of the movie, is that the way the cabins are set up at Camp Half-Blood is that there are 13 cabins for all the major gods, excluding Hades, who isn't allowed a cabin for reasons. But each of these cabins represent a major god, and each of these cabins house the children of that particular god. Again, with this exception of Zeus, Hera, and Poseidon, because Zeus and Poseidon aren't supposed to have children, and because Hera is the goddess of marriage, and she would never be practicing. She would never cheat on Zeus.
Okay,
basically.
But isn't Luke Hermes' child?
Hera.
Okay.
No. Luke is Hermes' son. Hera is the wife of Zeus. Two different gods.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah.
But we'll get into Hera.
So with the exception...
Hermes, I'm sorry, in book 2. But keep going.
With the exception of those three gods, the cabins are filled with the children. But in particular, the Hermes cabin houses more children than any other cabin at Camp Half-Blood. Because in order to be placed in a cabin, your parent has to claim you as theirs. One of the gods has to claim you as their children.
Okay, so the book does, not the book. The movie does none of this.
Yeah.
You get introduced to, this is who I am. I understand this is who you are. I understand this is where you come from. Mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the mayhem is after you understand that Luke is supporting Percy. He's pretending to be a friend. Everybody's in support of Percy, has to go out and find this boat. It's not necessarily what Chiron wants. Chiron doesn't send him out. Percy makes this decision along with Annabeth and Grover that that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a second.
Do the pearls exist in the book? These 3 pearls that they have to capture, which leads them to, let's start with Medusa. And then we go from Medusa, we go to Las Vegas and the Lotus Hotel. And there's a time slip there where he loses 5 days. And then they go to the Hollywood sign that leads to the underworld where Hades and the River of Styx are.
All of that is completely different in the book.
All of it?
The only things that are kind of the same are that they meet Medusa and that they go to the Lotus Casino. And I guess technically they go to the underworld.
They meet Medusa, they take her head,
because
they use it as a weapon. That does happen because they fight what's that 5-headed?
The Hydra.
The Hydra, thank you. They fight the Hydra and they use Medusa's head for that.
They do not do that in the book. They also do not keep Medusa's head. what Percy does after beheading Medusa is he mails it back to Olympus as sort of an fu to the gods.
Oh, wow, that doesn't happen. Okay, so the river Styx.
Yeah, they pass over it.
That's why they need the gold that Percy has gathered.
Yeah, to get to the boatman Charon. Yeah,
and then they get to Hades' lair, his castle, whatever you want to call it,
realizing we can get to Hades now, I guess.
and that's where they meet Persephone.
So everything about the depiction of Hades in this movie is drastically wrong, both from in the book perspective, but from a Greek mythology perspective as well. It's truly gross.
Because I was really rocking this movie.
So Hades is not like Satan, and the underworld is not like hell. That's not.
They made it look like that.
It's
because it's hellhounds that they are first encountering when they get off of the boat. That they go through the River of Souls.
Yeah, no.
Did they go through the River of Souls?
Yeah, you have to cross over 6 to continue.
Okay.
Also,
okay.
Side note: this is a bit of a nitpick, but I prefer the location in the underworld is in a radio station, not the Hollywood sign. That's a little bit thing.
Well, born and raised in Los Angeles, I get it. It makes perfect sense to me. But anyway, I see your point.
But yeah, everything. Okay, where to start? So, what happens? Refresh me. What happens when they get to the underworld?
So they get to the underworld. They meet Persephone, and they realize that when Percy is trying to defend himself against Hades, he drops his shield and his little 8-pin sword. They get swatted away because Hades is like, I can't believe you showed up here, nephew. I got an issue with you. And so when the shield drops, the lightning bolt is tucked away there. They instantly realize that the shield and the shoes came from Luke. Ergo, it must have been Luke that stole the boat.
Mm-hmm.
But Hades doesn't care. Persephone gets the boat. She's a little excited about how this boat can work to her advantage. So she uses it against Hades and frees Percy on the condition that Grover stays. She gives him the lightning bolt and says, now, those little pearls you collected, and frees the mother, because that's why they go to Hades, to get his mother and free her. That's part of why they're down there. His mother was taken there when she was captured. And so Hades brags that he has her, give me the bolt or else. So when he is standing with Persephone and she's like, okay, I want to help you because I'm stuck down here with him and he gets on my nerves, and she's having a good time being mean to Hades. Mother's free, but there are only 3 of these pearls. So only 3 people can go. So she says somebody got to stay. They pick Grover. That happens in the book?
No, none of that. Well, first of all, the relationship between Hades and Percy in the book is different in that it is a misunderstanding as they go through the quest that Hades is basically the one who stole the boat. They believe that for a while doing the quest. And they're going there to retrieve the bolt from Hades, which I'm sure is the same in the movie. But what they don't realize is that even though Hades is sending like all these monsters to chase after them and trying to get them, he's not after. He does not only does he not have the bolt, he's not after the bolt at all, because 2 things were stolen from Olympus during the winter solstice, both Zeus's master bolt and Hades' helm of darkness.